Our stock market outperformed the Yanks in October. What stocks should we be looking at, and do we have the dopiest politicians in the world? I'm Peter Switzer.
I'm Paul Rickard.
And we're mad about money. All right, Paul, a bit of a shocker after underperforming for nearly 10 years, or 6 or 7, 8 years. Our market did really well in October.
Yeah, up 4%, Peter, up 8% year to date if you include dividends.
Yeah, why not?
4.3% if you don't. Now, a lot of people wouldn't be seeing that because the top 20 is still lagging, and in fact, it's most of that outperformance is coming from the mid caps and more recently the small caps, which I think the resources sector coming back to life. But look, that's not bad. Just came back to October. Aussie market up 4%. S&P 500 only up 2.2%.
That's the poor old Yanks.
And NASDAQ up 3.6%. Now, the Dow Jones did a little better, 4.3%, but it's the first time we've done better than the US for a long time. So a bit of catch up, and I think a very significant move from 5,700 to 5,900.
This is a dangerous question, Paul, but do you reckon we can beat 6,000 before Christmas?
I think we can test 6,000. Look,
gutless answer. Go on.
I don't think it's a gutless answer. I'm feeling more confident about the market, but I think as many people have said, got the bell already. We need to see earnings come through. Now we're going through AGM season. If we start to get a little more confidence coming out from some of those companies, and they talk about how they're travelling in the first 3 or 4 months, then maybe we'll get a bit of a revision upwards. So
I say yes, as long as Donald doesn't screw up along the way. All right, now let's go to the stocks that you might like, or some of the stock stories that you think are important.
Well, I think there are two. One, I think resources. Look, I think you were going to talk about Macquarie upgrading forecasts. There's no doubt that with growth, we're seeing it in copper and nickel and other metals. They're seeing strong underlying for base metals. Iron ore is always a bit hard to predict, but resources are doing okay. Oil price sitting very comfortably now above $50, and energy's been one of the better performing sectors recently in our market. So. I've got to say that you've probably got to be at least index weight in the resource sector, and we're seeing in some of the small companies. So I sort of like those to hang on to. I think the banks have got to come good for our market to go a lot higher. So we haven't got NAB out tomorrow, Westpac on Monday. ANZ was a little disappointing the other week. Macquarie was good. Let's just see how that pans out.
One thing I like, Paul, for the overall economy and also for the banks, Chris Richardson from Deloitte Access Economics has pointed out he believes 2018 is going to be good for wage rises. Yeah,
I mean, look, it should be. I mean, yesterday's credit figures were a bit disappointing again. Still, housing market's okay, but the business market, I think the annual rate on growth and business credit was still under 1%. So that's still hard for the banks to grow revenue, but I just think people might re-rate them a little bit. There's a lot less risk in the banks than there was, say, 2 years ago.
And I reckon if people want to get on the small cap revival, maybe they should look at a small cap fund. It might be an easy way of doing it.
It might be an easy way. It's a really hard market. You've got to really know your stocks to play that. And maybe, you look at either, there's some really good managers out there in the small and mid cap stocks and also some of the ETFs. So maybe you should play it that way.
Okay, last issue. Do we have the dopiest politicians in the world? Steve Barrie, Senate President, works out that his dad is not a ridgy-dig Aussie. How long did it take him to work that one out?
Well, he's a Tasmanian, and it does does take time down there to percolate. Look, we do. I mean, look, why we haven't had an audit already, who knows? I mean, we'll get on with it. I mean, you can't have this thing hanging on. I mean, I think we've got to move forward. I think the Australian public are just so tired of this issue, and I reckon. Look, I feel sorry for Malcolm. The press is being so hard on him, saying it's chaotic. It's not his making. When you've got a one-seat majority, that's not your making. You can't do much about it. It's not chaos, but we do need to get back to government and get this issue out and done with.
And I think the big worry is, I think this mess around leadership and who's going to be the government of the day must affect investment. It's an economic threat. If I'm, say, for example, wanting to do a development, and I think that maybe all of a sudden Bill Shorten becomes Prime Minister, we know he's anti-negative gearing, we know he's anti-capital gains tax discounts. All this would mean I hold back until I see where we're going.
Well, we know political uncertainty is never good for the economy and not good for ultimately for the share market. So let's get on with it. Let's work out who our 150 House of Reps people and our 76 senators are. Can't be that hard to get 226 that pass the citizenship test. And move on.
I don't want to sound too jingoistic, but let's get foreigners out of the parliament. I'm Peter Switzer.
I'm Paul Rickard.
And we're mad about money.